just so that I can continue to give my own vocal therapist work to do.
And the rest of us nightmares about nasal insertions. I've had those procedures from the other end, and I thought that was bad, but I'm rethinking it. Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. I'm Softie.
And I'm Kitty.
And today we're welcoming a member of our Hansa to the show.
Today's guest needs no introduction because you'll recognize her from every episode of Breakfast in Beauclair. She's a product designer, podcaster, and a live painter based in New York City.
She started her Witcher journey with The Witcher 3 and the books, which inspired her to launch Good Morn, a visual journal, and this podcast. She spent the last 8 years creating content, building communities, and hosting meetups for Witcher fans around the world.
Please welcome Alyssa from Breakfast in Beauclair.
That was fun. Hi, guys. So excited to be here on a Kitty and Softie hosted episode.
You're so welcome. We're so glad that you were able to join us today on Breakfast in Beauclair. Alyssa, is there anything you want to say a little bit about your journey and how you started loving The Witcher?
Yeah, so I originally came to The Witcher through The Witcher 3, and then shortly after read the books. And it was at that point I was, like everybody else, like obsessed. So I didn't have anyone to talk to about the books and the series. I did want to start a podcast, but I didn't have anybody in my immediate network who was particularly interested in fantasy or in fiction or in The Witcher. Instead, I did what I could do on my own, which was go online and start Good Morn, which was taking quotes from The Witcher and pairing them with like 16th to like 19th century etchings, and then put those online. And then, holy smokes, I ended up gathering weird little people from all around the world who are interested in quotes from The Witcher. And then suddenly I was like, oh no, I have friends to make a podcast with. And that's how season 1 of Breakfast in Beauclair came about. I think I started this journey, like the whole Witcher content creation stuff, like 8 years ago, which is crazy. It's been so long.
Whenever you do a highlight post about how many years, I cannot believe them. I'm like, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I want to vomit inside. I was like 27 when I started, like, is that right? No, 26 when I started like doing stuff for The Witcher. By the time this episode comes out, I think I will be or have just turned 34. So making it longer than Jesus.
Isn't this one of the years that you miss out, though? So really, you'll still be 33.
Yeah, really, I'll still be 8. I'm a leap year baby, if you didn't know.
Thank you so much for sharing. It is so, again, we're just so excited that you're here with us today. And we are going to talk about chapter 11, Tower of the Swallow. Very excited to conclude this book and the second to last book of the series. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about going into the last book now.
I'm excited. Like, it's been so long. The end of the saga, from Baptism Fire to Tower of Swallows to Lady of the Lake, like, I love endings, I think, in any sort of multi-part series. I think Baptism Fire is still, like, up there. Tower of Swallows is scary, but I enjoyed it. Lady of the Lake, I feel like everything comes together in a mishmash way, and there's a lot of really awesome scenes that happen, like the Battle of Brenna, and like the title of the podcast comes from Lady of the Lake. So yeah, really excited to get to all of that. And again, probably another year.
It is so exciting to hear you talk on your own podcast because you're so generous in giving us the opportunity. So I'm gushing hearing you gush. It's very nice. And in that, today we'll conclude our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of the Swallow with chapter 11. As Nenika's novices are sent to war and Triss and Iola search for Ciri's location, Ciri heads toward the Tower of the Swallow. Making a last stand on a frozen lake, she massacres Tawny Owl's Hansa, evades Bonnart, and escapes to another world.
Here's a quick synopsis of the chapter. At the Temple of Melitele, Mother Nanika sends 2 novices to serve as field medics on the front lines. Triss Merigold and the scribe Yara look on, the latter frustrated that he cannot fight to save Ciri. With Triss's help, Iola I attempts a trance to divine Ciri's location. Meanwhile, far to the south, a fisherman named Goster encounters a girl on a black mare who asks for directions to Tarn Mira and the ruins of a tower. Rience, Bonnart, and Skellen close in after 3 weeks of pursuit. Rience recalls Yennefer's capture, under whom the sorceress endured torture rather than betray Ciri. Kenna and a few others desert, but Bonnart drives the rest forward onto the ice. There, Ciri turns the tables, massacring her hunters on Visigota's daughter's ice skates. When Rience begs for help, Ciri exacts vengeance, slicing off his fingers before he sinks beneath the ice. Bonnart pursues her to the ruins, but the wild hunt appears, a tower materializes, and Ciri vanishes within. Inside the tower, Ciri confronts visions of the past and future, and learns from Visigota that her elder blood grants mastery over time and space. She steps through into a new world of spring and music, where an elf greets her. What took you so long?
So, Alyssa, tell me a little bit about your overall thoughts about the chapter.
Yeah, this chapter is legendary. I feel like with everything else in Tower of Swallows, everything happens so quickly, and it's like these scenes are so iconic, like Ciri on ice skates, and then it only ends up being a couple of pages. I was like, wait, that was really fast. But when you're reading it as a first-time reader, it's so captivating. And the way that it all plays out, the unveiling of what you now realize are ice skates a couple of chapters before, when she's going through Visigota's daughter's stuff, it's just badass. It's so badass, and it's so fun to read, and I think brings the reader a lot of satisfaction after hearing everything she had to endure with Bonhart over the course of the book. So yeah, satisfying ending, and then obviously the ending in this new world makes you want to learn more.
Visigota is such a great character for Ciri. He really helps her with development. And then you get this beautiful follow through of Visigota when Ciri has entered the Tower of the Swallow. Visigota is desperate to know whether Ciri has managed to avoid psychological harm. This harks back to their ongoing debates over vengeance. Do you agree with Ciri's assertion that she held back from vengeance?
I mean, it's interesting because, like, Ciri is selective. She kills Rince pretty brutally because I think Rince tortured Yennefer. She knows that he's been talking about, like, destroying them with these hands and these fingers. And so she kind of goes out of her way to make him specifically suffer. But she doesn't kill Tawny Owl. She picks off people up until she has the means to escape. So what do you guys think?
I think what's really great is when she watches the cat eat the mice and some of the more disturbing things that Visogota recognizes in Ciri. And I think she's protective of some of these, she doesn't mind gore, violence, revenge because she believes they make her a stronger person. She's able to fight, she's able to defend. And so I do believe Visogota sees, although he sees it as it can be a negative impact, he understands why she's had to do these things. And so it's a beautiful tie-in of like, well, I know you harmed them, Ciri. Of course I know you harmed them. I want to know that you're okay with it all. I understand you had to do these things, but I just want to make sure that it takes care of your well-being. He was so concerned for her true well-being. I love the part where it's like, do you mind if I take these? Sure, if they fit, go ahead and have them. You're right. It's like, wait, was that a coat? Was that no,
Yeah.
it's a pair of ice skates. It's beautiful. I love what you said too about the cinematic part about the ice skates and the visuals there.
Yeah, and the whole business with vengeance, it calls back as well to the very start of the chapter, and all throughout there's little things sprinkled through it that just take you back to Blood of Elves. That's the book that it really calls you back to, with Ciri being taught first by Geralt and then mentored by Triss and then by Yennefer, and lots of things that people have told her. If you remember in that Triss was trying to excite the witches and talk to them about the war outside and how they really ought to get involved. And it's got nothing to do with us. But Ciri overhears it and she gets very excited and said, yes, that's why I'm learning to use a sword. I'm going to go and cut down that Black Knight who made me feel fear. I want to get over it. And Geralt's response then was, and therefore you'll stop learning, said Geralt in a voice colder than the walls of Kaer Morhen, until you understand what a sword is and what purpose it serves in a witcher's hand. You will not pick one up. You are not learning in order to kill and be killed. You are not learning to kill out of fear and hatred, but in order to save lives, your own and those of others. I think that kind of ties in with it in a way, how she's seeing herself as maybe holding back. And the one person there she's got personal beef with is Skillen. He's the one who's cut her face open. And yet, weirdly, he's one of the ones that she lets go. But Rience, she goes for. And I think that harks back to the previous chapter. If you think about, the things that he said to her when he first met her there.
Maybe Ciri's a fan of the democratic process, and she just really likes Skillen.
It does make me think of like when it's someone else being threatened, like Rince was a direct threat to Yennefer, and so she wants to protect Yen, whereas I think Skellen hurting her, that's the thing that she has her own agency to either forgive or to move past, even though it was like physical harm. I wonder if that's something that like she can find forgiveness in for herself without having to like get revenge for her mother figure.
It was so excellent when she's hovering over Rents and this menacing pulling down of the mask. And my favorite is that Sapkowski says she smiles at him and he looks at her hideous face. And smile hideously is something that has been used to describe Geralt. And I just really love the way that that's like her Witcher transformation to me, really sealing that in, because we talk about how, Geralt's not actually the prettiest pony in the stable. He's the warhorse. He's
Sometimes the donkey, yeah.
sometimes the donkey. He's a little bit more worn in. And so I think that is a really nice way to draw in Ciri's full transformation to Witcher lifestyle.
Obviously, we can't answer this, but I'd be curious if like that was a translator's decision or if it's actually the same in Polish as well for Geralt as it is for Ciri in the scene.
Because I do know they say grotesque. It's such a nice way to tie in Ciri's vengeance and the fingers themselves. We talked a little bit about how some of the things that would have influenced Sapkowski when it comes to this time period, including horror films. When Ciri injures the other members of Skellen's Hansa, they're not necessarily the goriest of moves. They're ones that are enable you to move. So they're on legs, they're on arms, and then particularly fingers and feet. So that's almost the horrifying part of it, is that slow loss of mobility and the realizing that something worse is going to happen. It's the perfect way to draw suspense and a great buildup for the final cut.
When she actually confronts Rience as well, she's described as skating very slowly and purposefully towards them. It's like at this point she's got them.
Yeah.
She's already wiped most of them out. There's 3 have gone into the ice and they've crawled back out again and they're lying on the side, sort of just waiting to see what's going to happen. And there's Rience still hanging desperately on, calling for help. And she just skates slowly up and still got blood trickling from the sword. It's so
Yeah.
menacing. And everything before has been so fast and so difficult to keep an eye on. The fact that Kitty was very quick to point this out, it was just, it's an incredible sequence, but it's taken straight from horror films. The whole nature of it and what's beautiful and typical Sapkowski's subverted it. Yeah, sure, it's a horror film, but we're actually rooting for the monster in this one. So normally this terrible killing thing coming out of the fog is the baddie. And in this one, it's very difficult when talking about, rising above vengeance and stuff. It's very difficult as the reader not to be exulting in these deaths on the ice. It kind of asks you some pretty serious questions about your own point of view.
That's one of my favorite things about this chapter too, is that point of view. There are very few scenes throughout the books in which you feel what it's like to be on the other side of our heroes. And they're terrifying, like to be on the other side of Geralt's sword or Ciri. And just like the tension, I feel like both horror and comedy are always that interplay between like tension and relaxation. So I feel like this chapter does that really well. And then you have like that one little breath where you go to the POV of a school of fish at the bottom of the lake. And then it's the fish are like, the bravest fish went up to the casket.
There's something lovely as well about the fact that that xenogloss that Vilgefortz has been talking to them through, and xenogloss is just literally words from the outside.
Yeah.
That's what that means. But it's the idea that they've gone into this wooded area with all the lakes and things, and they're getting bad reception on the xenogloss.
Yeah.
But once it's in the water, of course, where sound travels better in water, it's like they've got perfect signal under the water.
Their whole journey to get there to Skellen's Hansa Bonnart's journey, they divide the lake at one point. And so if you noticed, there are different fates from the adventurers that go east and the adventurers that go west, including the separation of Kenna and whom she is able to draw away. That whole part is absolutely fascinating because we're talking a little bit about fate. And there's the argument, is that destiny, their decision to leave, or is it them defying destiny?
It's a hard thing to answer. Like, that scene in particular has such good bangers from both Kenna and Skellen. Like, I remember one of my favorite Good Morin posts is actually from this scene when Kenna's like, "Don't threaten us with the hangman because who knows who's closer to the scaffold, you or us." And she says something about like, maybe one day we'll even meet each other on the same scaffold because they're not going to hang you with the nobles, are they, Skellen? They're going to hang you with us, with these rats.
And whoever's meant to hang won't drown.
Yeah, that again slaps. She has such good one-liners in this chapter. I think it's interesting looking at this again after Crossroads of Ravens, which we just did the recording for yesterday. But it's this idea that like destiny can't be hoodwinked. And so I wonder like if it's much the same, like to that quote, Softie, whoever's destined to hang won't drown. If the assumption is that in the worlds of The Witcher, destiny is real, like I think the outcome will find a way, regardless of what they choose to do, but it's heavy. But I love this scene.
We kind of picked up on a divine intervention side to this as well, because
Mm.
the chapter starts with Nenneke trying to get Iola to have a trance to get a clear picture of Ciri. So you've literally got the night before they're reaching out, and Triss is piggybacking on the signal, but she's not able to contribute to it. This is sent out there, but you've got the Goster, the fisherman, is saying that he had bad dreams the night before.
Mhm.
And there's actually 4 of the party that go down the west side of the lake talk about having these bad dreams. So Davitsi Creel actually joins the Joanna Selborn and Tilla Crada and Andres Vierni are the first ones who decide that they're not going to go any further. So once the party splits and Bonhart and Riance and the others, Bert Brigden and Stigwood the pirate and people go down the east side, and the ones who are left on the west. But then you've still got Stefan Skillan, Boreas Munn, who's the tracker, and Dacre Silliphant, who's kind of Stefan Skillen's recruiter who went out and got his hands for him. They all had these bad dreams the night before, and that's almost certainly come from this intervention, because when Ciri gets into the tower, you'll notice she actually looks into one of these doorways where she can see things, and she sees Iola and Nenneke praying before the altar. But the figure that's looking over them and holding their hands over them and giving them the blessing is actually Modron Freya. So it's not the same manifestation of the goddess you would expect to be for the Temple of Melitele, where you'd expect it to be the triple-faced version of the, maiden, mother, and hag. So it's really, really fascinating. She's described there fully with her diamond necklace and her golden eyes and the cat and the falcon, which Ciri symbols as well, just to be interesting. You get this sense that these dreams are sent beforehand, and that peels away 4 members of this party. Straight away it gets it down to more manageable numbers for her. There's something there.
I think divine intervention is also really tied in at the beginning when the chapter opens with Nenneke, Yola, Triss trying to get a clear vision of Ciri, and the objects that they describe is a bone comb, a cheap ring, a book with tattered binding, and a faded light blue sash. There's a lot of importances with these items. The bone comb reminded me of her time in Kaer Morhen with Triss, and a book with tattered binding, probably something she'd had with Yara, and a faded light blue sash, her sash that Calanthe gave her when she was escaping. But the cheap ring has actually more important reference that Softie will explain.
I was waiting in suspense.
I don't know if you remember, but
I don't remember.
Yennefer got very angry with Ciri because she was struggling with her lesson. It
Mm.
turned out she'd got a mark on her finger and said, "Have you been wearing a ring? I told you no metal, no stones, no crystals."
Mm.
And she says, "But I want it. I want it from, I think, can't remember the name of the novice. It began with an M. Can't remember it. Doesn't matter." She beat her at a game of wooden tops, and it's just the
Yeah.
fact that she'd won it, that she wanted to wear it. We then switched to Sire de Vries going and having a meeting, had been invited to a meeting with Vilgefortz. He had had some equipment off to one side that he had sort of cloaked by a spell, but, she just does her superpower thing
Yeah.
and looks straight through it and says, "Oh, are you looking for Yennefer? Because that's not going to work." All of her stuff is active, that you can't pick her up using metal, crystal, and stone.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. That was when we first found that, Vilgefortz is desperately searching for Ciri without knowing why. That all just comes from that single ring. So it's just these little mentions in this chapter that just take you rippling off back through the other parts of the story. It's really quite clever. It's reminded me as well, the objects, in the temple that they're saying these are things that Ciri touched. It also brings to mind that first time when Yennefer meets Ciri and she opens that drawer and there's an old scruffy belt, some fur boots, and then there's an empty carafe of wine that Geralt must have left there.
And then we get Yennefer's inability to be found whenever she gets kidnapped. The first thing Viggo is like, take that necklace off of her. And so that's kind of a nice way to tie in that necklace does give her powerful capabilities. With her inability to be found, Viggo is now using Yennefer because of their strong emotional attachment in order to seek out Ciri. And Viggo mentions that he was considering kidnapping Triss or Nennika. So the idea that Viggo uses emotional connections of Ciri in order to find her and locate her kind of follows along with the idea that death follows Ciri. What are your thoughts on that?
So it does feel inevitable if we followed just the entire pattern of her life, like literally from birth with, presumably Pavetta and Junie, with Calanthe and the siege at Sintra, with the Witchers, with everything that's come after. If we look at what's in the text and not what Sapkowski has said in interviews, I think that she kind of is set up, not quite as like an antichrist, but it is always that tension between good and evil and what she will ultimately choose. You can also trace that over the course of the book, too, when she starts to identify herself as death. So regardless, I think, of like what divine or like supernatural association is like happening around her, like I think that's an identity that she chooses to embrace as she exacts revenge at Dundare, on the ice. Yes, there are all these rumors about her. Yes, you could say that she is the personification of death. And I think at the end of the book, she ultimately chooses that. So, like, that's at least what I would say on that.
Did you notice in Crossroads of Ravens, chapter 15, there's a preface to one of the chapters that
That's Visigoda?
Visigoda, yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, it must have been from when he was writing, because obviously he's virtually blind when Ciri's with him. And where he doesn't write down his medical notes, for instance, he just dictates them without writing them down because he can't see. That one's really interesting because later he's desperately, obviously, trying to get Ciri to not leave. He
Mm.
doesn't want her to go out and exact revenge. A younger, more virile version of himself when he was leading the objection to Fergus Far Emrys, for instance. So he actually helped, the usurper and everything. He threw them out and put Emir into exile in his youth. But the quote is, the vast majority of people claiming that violence and savagery are egregious and morally unacceptable to them are plainly and simply unable to use violence, even in self-defense, in the defense of their nearest and dearest, or when it is necessary. That is called making a virtue out of inaction. I just love that. How do you feel how that goes counter to everything he says later?
When Ciri flees and is able to make it to the Tower of the Swallow, she realizes she is being closely followed by Bonnart. Bonnart claims no god or devil can stop him, only to fall before both. As Ciri flees to the Tower of the Swallow, he's stopped by the Wild Hunt, which we discussed as the ultimate form of chaos. How does that impact, and knowing that that's kind of how we're seeing the Wild Hunt, how does that tie into Ciri's plan and Bonhart's failure to capture her.
One of the things that the Wild Hunt says is basically like, go away, mortal, this isn't for you. And that's not something that I think we really consider in The Witcher. Like, obviously, there's supernatural stuff, and there are like elves, there are vampires who aren't necessarily immortal, but like, have much longer lifespans than regular humans do. I feel like with that one sentence, suddenly like the scale and the stakes are taken to like a whole other level that Barnhart himself was not prepared for. So I feel like it's a very efficient way to kind of like speak to how important Ciri is in the grander scheme of the world, while also shaping Barnhart as a man who doesn't give a damn that those are the kinds of things that are out there, that doesn't curb his pursuit at all. So, like, I think it makes him a more terrifying character as well, because he still has a certain amount of either faith in himself or is just such a sadistic character that, obviously everything he does to Ciri comes from a level of satisfaction. I think it just totally just like throws a lot of the expectations like out the window. And then now it becomes like an even bigger story. So Bonhart's failure, I think, just sets him up to be even more cruel the next time that we meet him, and even more motivated whenever we come back around to his character.
Begone, mortal. She is not yours. She is ours. Begone.
Yeah.
It's very dismissive. No one treats Bonhart like that. I almost see it as like a comedy moment of him just by himself on his knees, like, no, very much upset about the whole thing.
The text notes his courage, though. Any normal person would be slightly put out by these spectral riders.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got the first thing that happens is the unicorn that rears up in front of him, which sort of puts him off slightly. But it's obviously, to us, it's a throwback to the Korath Desert and also the escape from Unicorn, where Skelen's Panzer are talking about how these amazing things happened, this little offering that they had there, this little unicorn statue that was made of wicker or whatever at that place sort of came to life and was chasing people around. That's why some of them started deserting before they even got down to the lake. We remember in the Korath Desert that the unicorns were discussing what to do with her, and they were saying that they ought to just trample her with their hooves, that she's dangerous to everyone because something about this girl. But then they choose to save her because she looked after Ihuaraquax. Sorry, not an easy name for me to say. So you've got two sides there. You've got whoever the Wild Hunt are and the unicorns. It's people who are joining up these forces to make sure that Ciri gets into the tower. I'd like your thoughts on something that Yennefer said when she was training Ciri, when she was she was trying to help her in the temple, help her deal with her powers, to certainly try and control them, because she was, as she was saying, transmitting as this source, and kept attracting Vilgefortz amongst other people, because we kept hearing the dialogue of, you have mistaken the stars reflected in a ditch at night for the majesty of the heavens above, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we know it was him. So he was obviously able to focus on her when she was transmitting like that, but couldn't actually find her. So Yennefer described magic as, she said there's three ways of looking at it, really. And some people, it's just pure chaos. There's a place where eventually someone's going to open this door and let chaos into our world, and our world will be destroyed. Then there's also the idea that it's art and it's beauty and everything, and that you can make wonderful things, and it's all for the betterment of everyone. And there's the other, that it's science, and through study we can discover amazing things and things to make the world a better place. They're all right in their own way. They're all these definitions, but none of them do it fully. So we wasted a bit of time doing a Venn diagram, trying to work out where all the different sorcerers fitted on it, but it really doesn't get you anywhere. So, but it's fun. What was really intriguing is after that, she kept taking Ciri in visions and things, and she would help her and take her to this forbidden door that they kept talking about. And she says, this door, this is the dangerous place, this door, this is a portal everyone knows has been closed. They said it was closed at the conjunction of the spheres. So this is before men found that they could do magic as well. So it's since this portal's been closed. But there's voices come through the portal, and sometimes power comes through the portal. And it's something that you reach for because of the power, but you just have to be so careful, because if you open the door and let it through, it could destroy everything. And I just think it's really interesting that it's perhaps this power that they're worried about beyond the door, it seems like, is the Wild Hunt. That's what would come through this portal, but that this portal that they're talking about is in fact the Tower of the Swallow, and this is why Ciri has to go there. This is the whole reason she's been bred, that her blood is what allows her to open the portal. It's interesting with Bonhart, when he's looking at it, he notices that the Aurora Borealis is all blazing up above it, and we've just had Modron Freya has clearly got involved in that fight to help Ciri get through it. That was the help that Yennefer had asked for when she was talking to her in the temple in Skellige. And what's really interesting was that Modron Freya, when she was there, said, whose side will you be on, Yennefer? Will you be on the east or the west side of the Bifrost? Will you be with Heimdall or against him? And how interesting it is that the people who go down the east side of the lake will die, and the ones that go down to the west side of the lake will live. And the west side of the lake is the side when you're with Heimdall, and the east side is the side that the Jotun come from at Gotterdammer. That's where the ship Naglfar comes from. It's made from dead men's fingernails and has got all the spirits of the dead on. So it's quite intriguing that that should come about. That's a bit too much of a coincidence in my book.
You mentioned a couple of things that I just think are worth commenting on. Speaking of wicker and hot things, their venture onto the lake leads to my favorite line of, maybe Skellen was right, but no, this is Riance and his thoughts. I would have gone and killed the Witcher instead of Skiru. Damn it, I'm freezing out here, and Skiru is probably somewhere nice and warm.
I know, the dramatic irony of that one is always like very good.
The setups are just incredible because it's the comedy of it, and I do feel like it's kind of the comedy of awful errors when it comes to the Hansa being on the ice and everything that befalls on them. I think it's really fascinating that Riance is the one that ends up like creating even a worse situation with his lack of magical ability, or his lack to control his magical ability, because we recognize he's not a very capable villain.
No,
And
no.
now he's just managed to mess it up even more. It's almost because like Skellen does have some kind of moral compass. He survives, while Riance is just pure evil and deserves no mercy whatsoever.
Yeah, because amongst the people that obviously survive are the ones that deserted. I don't know about you guys, but I was really happy with what happens with Joanna Selborne. I think
Yeah.
that's. Do you recall what becomes of her? Because it's told to us in this chapter.
Oh, yeah, she has her final place in the trial, and then right as they're about to send her back to the prison, she notices that the judge's eyes seem a little bit kind. He's got kind eyes, like vibes, and so she just like pricks his brain a little bit, and he changes his mind, and he's like, "Just let her free!" And she like wipes the blood from her nose and like runs out of the courtroom. Very funny.
I think in that case, that's definitely someone who deserved to survive. I don't think she's done anything that we learn about, certainly, that would suggest that she's someone who deserved to die in any way. One of the other people who survives as well is Boreas Munn, the tracker. How do we feel about his involvement in this?
Boreas is my Applegat. Sorry, just gotta
Boreas
get
is my second Applegat. I love Boreas Month. Like, I don't think it's for any particular reason, but he has the same kind of vibes, like without like spoilers or anything. He's another one of those characters that like I like to kind of like track, and he's just chilling, doing his little tracker thing. I think at this moment, he very much gives off like a I'm just following orders,
Yes.
which is questionable, obviously. And then even Kenna is like, well, whose orders? Are you following like the Empire, Tawny Owl, like your own gods? Like what's going on? And without so many words, just accuses him of having no conviction of his own.
And I hate to bring it up because I'm already like getting uncomfortable when I think about the Ryan's flashback to Viggo Fort's hideout and the torture of Yennefer.
Mm.
How does this alter our understanding of Yennefer's predicament and Geralt's assumptions? Every time I think about it, I just think of the tube going up her nose, and I just start holding my nose immediately and my
Yeah.
face, and it again, it's horror. It makes me think of, and this, Saw hadn't even come out, but I think of the Saw feature where the machine's in their mouth of sorts, and
Yeah.
she's enabled. Does your nose hurt? My nose hurts.
Well, have you ever had to do that before? Because I have a few times. So, again, if listeners don't know, over the last, I would say like 2.5 years or so, I've been actually going to vocal therapy. Originally for voice acting for the character that I play on Peculiar Radio. I just absolutely destroyed my voice in a session and then started seeing a vocal therapist. And when they wanted to take a look at my vocal health and my larynx and my vocal cords and everything, they have like effectively like a camera on a stick, like an anglerfish. You have to just like knock your head all the way back and they just stick it down your nose and down your throat.
Nope.
And they cover it obviously in like, lubricant that just smells and tastes like it's numbing, but it smells and tastes like cough syrup. You feel Softie and Kitty are noping so hard out of their videos right now. You have basically like cherry flavored numbing juice, just like up your nose and mouth.
Oh, that's much better then.
Up your nose and mouth, and then you just have like the stick that's going through your nose down your throat to take a photo of your larynx. And then so while that's happening, they're asking me to go like ah.
No.
It's terrible. I can't recommend it. I love my vocal therapist though. She's a gem.
So you have firsthand experience.
Yeah, it's terrible. I doubt that Vilgefortz has cherry flavored numbing liquid.
Oh, it's an awful predicament. And we learn that Yennefer doesn't give up Ciri throughout the course of it. I love the hidden compliment that Vigilforts gives Yennefer.
Yeah.
There might come a day when you find yourselves in a similar predicament. I can only hope you will show as much fortitude. And I love that like hidden compliment to her because she gives up Geralt and she gives up Geralt's location. And that is such a key because that ties back to Geralt realizing that somebody with magic is learning their whereabouts. I think it's so well done. And actually, it was Softie that had told me that if you are being tortured, which maybe I don't want to know how you were researching that, but anyway, when you are being tortured, you should focus on what you're willing to give away as information rather than what you're not willing to give away. So Yennefer was able to give away Geralt's location, and then really it gives us a different understanding of Yennefer and Geralt.
And it solves a puzzle for us that had been there with the real Hansa, not Skellen's, horrible Hansa, where they were trying to work out how Skiru had turned up and had been able to describe Milva with her haircut before she had cut her hair, and it didn't make any sense. And that's why we know that this apparatus that Vilgefortz is using, that he's forcing her into a trance to try and get her to show him Ciri, that there's obviously no barrier with time with this, that this is like, like a true vision. So is showing Geralt, but in the future, which is fascinating. That's how we learn how that works, because that was just completely impossible to explain otherwise. We get similar things, obviously, once we're inside the tower and Ciri starts looking through all these different doorways that are opening up around her. That's one of the really intriguing things there, that in one of them, she looks in and she sees Yennefer leading her by the hand. And if you go back to Blood of Elves and read that section where from the other side, it's Ciri has a strange feeling that somebody's watching her. And it's like, it's you in the future watching yourself in the past. It's terrific. One of the great things about finding out what happened to all the members of Skellen's Hansa and stuff, and working out that everyone who went down one side died and everyone who went down the other lived, is there's actually an extra death on the lake, which is really interesting. And I don't know if it's Sapkowski lost track because Bonhart left and he was remembering 7 and 7. So 7 are going to live, and then 7 needs to, it's like, should be 6 that die, but there's 7. So there's actually an extra person who dies. And the best I can come up with is that we've got an extra grave at Sodden Hill without a body, and now we've got an extra body on the ice. And I think if we asked Sapkowski, he'd probably say, if I needed you to know, I would tell you. And then he'll shrug in Polish, which is much more expressive than when you do it in English. Although I'm pretty sure that Elsa would tell us that the Poles and the English have absolutely no idea how to shrug compared to the French. So we should all be quiet.
A series going through the Tower of the Swallow, you were mentioning her being able to look into the future and the past, and she's also able to see Yennefer in her moment of being tortured. And she says, "Mummy, hold on, don't give up. I'm coming to help you." I gotta say, the first time I read this, I was not a mother.
Oh.
Second time reading this, I am a mom, and Yennefer has sacrificed herself. She's willing to accept whatever consequence just to get the focus off of her. And now Ciri will come back and try to save that Ciri's call. I'm coming to help you. Hold on, don't give up. And to switch the roles and reversals of your child now protecting you is so powerful. So, so powerful.
And I think it really does feed into the idea that when she appealed to help from Modron Freya, it wasn't just, oh, here's my diamond necklace to use, that this is it, this is the real help. It's like,
Mm,
I'll get your daughter, I'll help your daughter get to the Tower of
Yeah.
the Swallow. I'll help her to get through that forbidden portal that she's the one who has to open. And I think it ties in as well with the fact that it's Modron Freya rather than Melitele that we see as the manifestation of the goddess with the hands above Iola and Nanika. We also know that Freya is exactly the same as the Freya in our world, and that because she's about to be able to cross between worlds and literally does cross between worlds at this point, the idea of having two manifestations of the same deity in different worlds is, I think, really underlines the point of, just how strange this is, what's going on, and whether this is a divinity or whether it's just some kind of powerful being. We don't know. It doesn't matter. But it ties in with the whole destiny thing, that there's great forces at work anyway as to whatever's happening with Ciri. It's not just random chance that she's the one who's gone in there.
This is now because Visagota now, you are the master of the worlds. Ciri. Does she also refer to her as Lady of Time and Space yet, or is that coming up?
Yeah. This is the point where he does it. He's the one who calls out to her with it.
And that's so great because now we're really starting to understand the vast power that Ciri does have, tying into the very last question of what took you so long,
yeah.
or your thoughts in hearing that last line.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to get to the end of this book and then you've got to wait 1997 to 1999, and that's if you're reading in Polish. And so, like, getting to the end of this, and we've had such a big slog of a book. Like, and I use the word slog affectionately. It has been a very captivating and horrifying ride through all of Tower of Swallows for Ciri. And so, getting to this point, she has made her last stand on the ice. She's gone through like absolute hell with Bonhart, with the loss of her friends, the loss of her lover, the loss of her family, extending, all the way back to Calanthe and moving forward. Breakneck speed escape, and then she just like lands into spring. And I think it's so jarring and leaves the reader and like that line of like, what took you so long? It's just kind of like almost a slap in the face of being like, what? What just happened? Where are we going now? So I feel that it obviously invites more questions than answers and just leaves the reader with anticipation. And lucky for us, we just get to go straight to Lady of the Lake.
I love this sentence. Bird cherry blossom simply smells different in the world that I've lived in until this moment. Like you said, that's your tie, and we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is hot on the heels of Visigotta. The elder blood that flows in your veins gives you power over time and over space, over the dimensions and the spheres. You are now master of the world, Ciri. You have a mighty power. Do not let criminals or rogues take it from you and use it to their own ends, which is a nice, cheerful thing to say to someone.
The spring part is perfect that you mentioned because spring also represents rebirth,
Yeah.
something new, a start, spring blossoms on trees. And I love where Sapkowski reminds you that he's not the most reliable narrator because they weren't horses, but unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to doubt everything but it's that beautiful mystical land that she's landed into. One of the things that I think it's important to note is that he has an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So Yennefer also mentions that part of chaos can be artful. So in my mind, this is just another form of chaos that Ciri is running into.
It also calls to mind, I mean, I know I probably shouldn't do this. It's just that I was alive at the time and reading. So, it's books that were big at the time in fantasy. Was David Gemmell's Lion of Macedon was a big hit at that time. People really, really took to that one.
Yeah.
Included in that is there's like a trickster character in there who's the philosopher Aristotle, who's actually running around performing magical tricks. And the general Parmenion needs to get him 800 miles away so that he can do something in Macedon for him. And he says, well, that's a problem. He sort of comes around this hillside. He's being chased by assassins and sees this fellow, and he's just sitting there cross-legged up on the rocks. And he's also playing a pipe and ushers him through a cave. And he comes out of the other side, and he's gone 800 miles that he needs him to go to say, I need you to be here. I need you to do something. It does definitely bring to mind that same sort of vibe, that unexpectedly coming out of the door and seeing this person who's fully expecting to see you, and even though you have no idea who they are. One of the things that was so funny on the ice as well with Riance, as you said, he was so inept. His attempt to blast Ciri with magic actually ends up cutting an enormous crack in the ice, which then all starts crumbling and all the people start falling in. And at this point, they're all looking to see, what's this going to do to Ciri? Is this going to stop her? And of course, what they don't realize is that she's the Skellige all-island ice rock boulder leaping champion, undefeated. And a 7-foot crevasse in the ice is nothing. And she just sails over it.
She has left broken bones in her wake.
Yeah.
And the part where Boreas is realizing, where are her tracks? Why have they disappeared? And it's like, has she disappeared? Even worse, she's on skates. Like, it's just so well done, the buildup of it all. And then when they can hear things and they can't hear things because people are screaming, I think it might have been an extra Gemarian that was included on the ice when it came to the 6th as opposed to 7 deaths.
That moment when the sudden awful realization hits them that she's on skates, that she's completely suckered them, it obviously takes you back to the wonderful opening, which is from Florence Delanoy in The Surprise from the Book of Fairy Tales and Stories, which is, I have enormous eyes, all the better to see you with, shrieked the great iron wolf. I have enormous paws, all the better to seize and hug you with. Everything about me is enormous, everything, and soon you will discover it for yourself. Why are you looking at me so strangely, little girl? Why do you not answer? The Witcher girl smiled. I have a surprise for you.
It's so well done. I feel like Sapkowski will do that, give us a fairy tale inkling in order to kind of balance out some of the seriousness that's happening and remind you, this is mystical. Ciri is still supposed to achieve. I love that insertion there.
It's not the first time that he's linked Ciri to Little Red Riding Hood either, is it?
No.
Did the same thing in Broccolon.
Alyssa, what do we learn about our characters? What does it build on what we already know? Maybe some of their choices and development moving forward.
Yeah, this chapter, and I think really the book as a whole, we learn so much about Ciri's resilience. And I think if there was ever any doubt who the main character of The Witcher is, it's Ciri. And that feels so solidified in this book. This is very much like her hero's journey. We were just talking about this on the Crossroads of Ravens recording. The death of the mentor. We see that, Geralt has no mentors who die over the course of the books. If there was anything that, really, that you could really point to, and it's oh no, it's her story. I think we experience all of it in Tower of Swallows. So we see her resilience, we see, her early joy. We're put through trials, and when we get to the end of this book, we see her succeed and then just be thrown into something that she didn't even know was coming. And so I think we're starting to see her make her own decisions and make her own choices, which we've never seen her do, as everything in her life up until this point has been very much set for her by Calanthe, by Geralt, by Yennefer, and by the priestesses. So she's spent this whole book figuring out who she is going to be and how what she has learned will help her, both in terms of her Witcher's work as well as just the ways of the world. And it is very cruel to her, but I think we just deepen our understanding of who this girl is in the grander scheme of the continent, and then how that battles with who she has the desire to be.
And they've knocked it out of the park with making Witcher 4 a Ciri-led story. I cannot wait. Hopefully we don't get any more announcements like Grand Theft Auto 6 and we'll just get progress. Did you see that the star of Stranger Things goes, we got Stranger Things season 5 before we got Grand Theft Auto 6? He's like, I was a child when I played GTA 5 and I'm an adult now.
That's so silly.
Witcher 4, very exciting because that's going to continue series journey. And then I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention that recently on Netflix, season 4 of The Witcher did premiere on October 30th. Have you had a chance to watch it yet?
I watched the first 15 minutes, and then I had to go to work, and then it's now been 2 weeks, and I still haven't watched it yet. These are my last 2 recordings of the season, yesterday and today, so, like, now I can sit and I can watch something.
We love it. There were a couple things that do happen in season 4 that we did cover. So it's nice to see some of those things come to life. And we know that there's going to be some timeline adjustments, but it's been great. So I can't wait to continue on your journey with the Witcher Netflix. And we're excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, I did have to ask Softie, and I think maybe it was Charlie, for spoilers of like, I know the rats versus Bonhart is coming. I just need I need spoilers for how gory it's really gonna be. Like I was like, is it book accurate? And I did get the answer of like, yep. And I'm like, great.
Great.
I'm stressed out already.
And that's what it was that was covered from Tower of the Swallow. And I so viscerally remember the line, the rats began to scream and the rats began to die. And I think somebody in the writing room said, hey, we got to make them remember this part
Yeah.
because it was done with just this really wonderful creepiness to it all. Bonhart, Charlton Copley is phenomenal. Great casting.
Yeah.
I did have to think his handlebar mustache did kind of make me think of Yosemite Sam a little bit, but
Before we go, I'm going to sneak my host hat on just for this last question. But you guys have been with me all season. I think this is the first time I've ever had multi-episode guests in the same season. What was your experience like being kind of like behind the scenes and co-hosting this season of Breakfast in Beauclair?
Well, it cut out a lot of the suspense. Always when I've guested before, it's been, that big thing you're looking forward to, like your moment in the season and hoping you don't drop the ball sort of thing. And this was just 10 times more stressful. It's like,
Oh
oh my
no.
God, what if I drop the ball and I'm just annoying everybody? It's like, oh, not him again, So that was a worry. But no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's lovely always, guesting with other people as well to sort of, and people I've guested with before as well. It was it was lovely to be reacquainted. Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. And obviously being with Kitty on this one is fantastic. It's just like normal. We spent such a lot of time chattering away on the book club together, letting people in on the magic. We only knew we were going to be hosting this like about half an hour before we started. So this is an experiment.
it definitely gives me an insight into how much work you do, Alyssa, on the podcast. Audio Caleb, please don't edit this out. The work that you put into the podcast, the research it takes, having the knowledge. Obviously, we love The Witcher and the themes, everything that comes about it, so it can be easy to read about it. But in this nature, this is a calling. Really, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time to refresh, reread. I was finding myself going back and forth between chapters, misremembering things. So again, just kudos to what you do and how you've kept us all so organized. I think also something that really great for me is seeing something be completed. There's a lot of pride to take in that we're culminating this journey. And as somebody who's the mom of a toddler, I feel like I don't finish things a lot. I start things and I don't finish them. And I've finished something and I'm very proud. And again, the journey, talking with Softie, going from, deep discussions into the bone comb to discussions about current modern day situations has just been a journey in itself. So I'm grateful that you've again brought really great community members together. And next season, I think I'll be happy to take a little step back and be a little more of a viewer, understanding that I hope people realize that they are welcome to come on this podcast because we want to hear what you have to say. And so I hope that people see me and Softie being on here and recognize that, hey, maybe it is time for me to put my name in the hat and to join on for next season. So that's my big hope here today as well.
You guys have just been an absolute treat. Like, not only thank you for stepping up this season, thank you for stepping up and really making like the community your own by hosting like your own book clubs. And like, I would never be able to do what you guys do. And so I really appreciate you guys bringing that and sharing that joy, the research, and your stories with this community. Because I think, like, with every guest on the show, like, it colors our understanding of The Witcher. It colors our understanding of each other. It helps us understand like each other and all of the cultural nuances and all of like the diversity of experiences better. I have been so grateful to have you both on the show this season. Are one of you guys gonna take it to the outro?
And that's it for our show today. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And thank you to our Hansa for listening. Where can people find you? Is there anything our community can help you with or anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. So again, thank you both for joining me for this season. Thank you to our Hansa, of course. And you can find me on Breakfast in Beauclair, wherever you listen to the podcast or consume your social media. You can also find me painting over at It's an Art Journal on Instagram, where I do live painting around the city and around the world for events, weddings, and other things. You can find me painting in the club tonight, which is very exciting. I also still produce fiction podcasts with Lengthy Tangent. So if you really want to help me, you can go listen to Peculiar Radio, Theme Party the Podcast, and The Collection Moira Graves, wherever you're listening to Breakfast in Beauclair, just so that I can continue to give my own vocal therapist work to do.
And the rest of us nightmares about nasal insertions.
Yeah.
Next episode, join Alyssa and the Hansa for a discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's newest Witcher novel, Crossroads of Ravens.